Twitter brain, a new emerging hive mind. An information Game of Thrones. Wayne dead. November 25th. As I write this, it is election day for the 2022 midterms. Observing the political psychology at play and tribal associations being made, my mind and attention is being occupied by thoughts on politics and how they are deeply related to the topic of hive minds. Increasingly, I notice the existence of hive minds in American society and culture. Information propagating networks that reflect the net of collective values, desires, and combined intelligence of the participants that comprise it. I personally prefer referring to this collective mind as a meta-mind. The outermost mind is the more meta of a mind, because I think it breaks the expectation or need for a mind to behave as a hive. It can refer to many organizational architectures of a collective mind, but for the sake of using a more prominent term, I will refer to the concept of a meta-mind as a hive mind. By participating in a hive mind, you are connected to a network of information exchange between many nodes. Some nodes will have higher amounts of reach than others, likely making their information exchange more adopted by the collective crowd than a less connected node. Even if the viewpoint isn't widely adopted, the hive reaches a higher consensus based on the information exchanged, and the sharing node contributed even if its input was disagreed with. The mind of each human is contributing to a process of exchanging information and belief about the world that shapes a collective consensus, reflecting the combination of beliefs to the degree they were communicated, and this becomes the viewpoint of the hive mind. Systems behaving as a hive mind are very prevalent. I believe they exist in some form anywhere there is a shared network of thought. Even a conversation between friends becomes a linking of minds, and each brain's processing contributes to the group's consensus opinion. This effectively creates a stack of hive minds that embed into each other. An area I find the existence of hive minds more noticeable and distinct is in the crypto world. Each crypto project is largely its own tribe and has information flow channels and directions to exchange of thought. Each hive possesses information and perspective that resides purely to themselves. There are channels of information exchange in the Ethereum community that will never reach someone who associates to the Bitcoin hive mind, and vice versa. Which perhaps a hive mind is relative and depends on a reference point to base a certain pattern of connectivity. Each distinct pattern that forms technically acts as its own hive mind. But for the sake of determining the prominent hive minds, we should view the center of mass in connectivity as the basis for distinguishing hives. There are many formations of hive minds: crypto, as I mentioned, religion, sports fans, etc. One, however, I find myself contemplating the most is political affiliations. If you associate with the left or right, you will be connected to a different tree of mostly downward propagation of information. Downward meaning information is unlikely to flow in a reverse direction. There are nodes where information is shared to its connecting nodes, but the connecting nodes don't also communicate back to the sharing node. Depending on the hive mind you belong to, you will become aware of a different collection of knowledge and arguments for values. There are many beliefs we all hold purely because of the hive, tribe, we associate with. Our information accuracy and breadth is at the whim of our upstream nodes. I do not believe it is possible to ever exit the hive influence and be a purely independent thinker. I expect it may actually be a disadvantage to be in this situation. If the information is real and useful, having a shared network of information exchange can be very advantageous to the participants. Of course, it can be a detriment also if the information is noise rather than signal. So there is a competitive advantage of belonging to a hive that exchanges and processes information in the most accurate way. A hive that finds accurate, actionable meaning in the information that is shared should be able to make better decisions than a hive that propagates falsehoods. It seems intuitive to me there is a competition happening as to which hive can collect information about the world, affording greater agency to act based on the info. If there is less signal or even false signal, there should be opportunity to be outcompeted by an information network that just more accurately understands the nature of reality. Additionally, the nodes, people, most capable of rationalizing may tend to realize the traits of the superior hive and migrate to it, further feedback looping into its advantage over other hives. In layman's terms, the hive with the most accurate info and highest quality nodes to process the information will win. I lay out the competitive dynamic between hive minds and illustrate the political space as a particularly interesting battlefield because I feel as if we are on the dawn of a newly emerging hive taking motherfucking over. My personal desire is this new hive will come to be known as the 69 Party, or 69 Hive. This new entrant to the political space is siphoning nodes into its information exchange network. This network spans many different perspectives and depths of intellectuality, but some notable nodes I believe to be part of this hive are the likes of Joe Rogan, the All In podcast, Lex Fridman, Russell Brand. The list goes on, and no doubt my perception of notable nodes is biased to my personal collective hive mind. A new center of mass of information sharing is emerging outside the traditional left and right political hives, and I believe this center of mass is building around one notable figure and mother node. If you were to make a hierarchy of node connectedness, the mother node is the most connected node to this collective intelligence. I believe the mother node to this emerging hive mind to be Elon Musk. Musk alone propagates information at a greater bandwidth and reach than any other node that exists. The mainstream media, the President of the United States, Barack Obama, Donald Trump, Vladimir Putin, Joe Rogan all have less information propagating capacity and potential than I believe Elon Musk possesses. The amount of nodes within one step of connectivity appears to make Musk amongst the most connected nodes on the planet. If calculated by Twitter followers, at the time of writing this, Elon sits as the second largest account with 115 million followers, 118 million at the time of posting. The top spot, held by Barack Obama with 133 million followers, what Wikipedia said. In terms of immediate one-step connectivity, perhaps an argument exists that Elon isn't the most significant node, because someone has more followers than him. However, I believe a more significant measure for this would be the amount of notified followers or nodes. What is the quantity of directly connected nodes that not only follow Musk but will actually be exposed to the information he shares? A node's raw follower quantity may not be very implicative of which node has a greater capacity for information propagation. We can only speculate as to the relative strength between nodes, but I think there exists a very compelling argument that Elon is the most significant hive mind participating node. For instance, if you compare the engagement between the last 20 tweets from Elon at the point of time I'm writing and compare it to the last 20 tweets of Barack Obama, excluding retweets and commented tweets, the average engagement for the last 20 tweets of each was Obama averaging 35,308 likes, 7,809 retweets, and 5,366 comments per tweet. Elon in comparison averaged 428,655 likes, 45,140 retweets, 44,595 comments per tweet. Further comparing to the current president of the USA Joe Biden, the engagement performance of the Elon node to the Biden node was an even greater margin than between Obama and Elon. Elon had 12x more like engagement per tweet than Obama, who holds 18 million more followers. And 20x more like engagement than Biden, who only has 27 million followers. The President of the United States is among one of the most prestigious and influential positions for a person to hold. I find it curious that Elon has such a significantly larger connectivity web than the leader of the most powerful country on Earth. Furthermore, that larger web seems to spur many times more Hive activity than even the most followed node of Barack Obama. The maximum reach capacity of any information propagated from an Elon Musk origin is beyond my ability to determine. But just from the rough back of the envelope tweet comparisons between some other very prominent influential figures, Elon appears to have a propagation advantage and I think should be viewed as a supernode. Elon's information sharing and contribution to the Hive mind, I believe, is forming around his presence is not exclusively posting tweets. Elon frequently will provide greater depth of his thought processes in long-form interviews, Tesla earnings calls, product presentations, or even just his private in-person conversations with his acquaintances. The breadth of mediums Elon regularly propagates his viewpoints and thoughts on various topics is even more indicative to me that he is serving as one of the greatest Hive nodes to ever exist. The time it takes from the moment a thought is conceived to then being communicated to the rest of the connecting tree of information flow for Elon is the shortest and most efficient communication cycle than for the mother nodes of any other Hive. If we view a Hive mind as a network of human brains that intake information, process the information to pull meaning about reality and then propagate the processed info further downstream to the rest of the Hive. Every node that is part of the same web of information flow contributes to the Hive's net perceptions and opinions about the world. The right and left-wing Hives rely on traditional news media as its primary information and opinion propagation mechanism. I suspect, however, this newly emerging Hive will have a significant information advantage as it is less reliant on the constraints traditional media formats suffer from. Not to argue the only information exchange mechanism of the left and right is traditional media, news articles, TV segments, but that these Hives have a higher reliance on them which are just less timely and lower bandwidth capacity than newer internet-based channels. Additionally, the traditional structure is much more restrictive of who can share information with who, and becomes a system of few nodes communicating with the many about what information is significant. This effectively forces what views to hold and think. Of the many information channels Elon communicates through, I believe the most significant channel that separates him from other mother nodes is by doing long-form interviews where he essentially stimulates connecting nodes with direction and goals, but also a philosophy that those goals are rooted in. Understanding the philosophy layer of a proposed direction, I believe, strengthens the motivation in the pursuit of the given goal. Without a long-form platform for communicating, this layer will largely be ignored. Elon will communicate a goal, notable details, philosophy for his rationale, etc., and then the Hive goes forth on thinking on the problems that need to be solved for a specific goal to be accomplished. For example, Elon explains desires for an $8 subscription to Twitter and the Hive begins contemplating desired features and improvements to the system. Information advocating for a goal went out and proposed solutions came back. Marques Brownlee, perhaps the most notable tech reviewer, released a video titled Dear Twitter, providing his thought processes about what he wants Twitter to become and what ways it can improve. Another example of the Hive almost going to work to collectively solve the goals of the Hive happened between Mark Cuban and Elon Musk on Twitter. Mark provided a recommendation for Twitter to improve on a feature where he was experiencing a pain point. Musk then replied essentially acknowledging the input was received. At Elon Musk, from one entrepreneur to another, for when you have your customer service hat on. I just spent too much time muting all the newly purchased checkmark ACCTS in an attempt to make my verified mentions useful again. Hope this helps. In a very organic manner, a network of minds is converging around shared goals. Among these goals, an important one seems to be in regard to how minds can more effectively link with each other and distinguish useful information from false or unuseful information. To a large extent, Twitter is infrastructure or substrate for Hive minds to live on, and I believe Elon understands the essence of a mind as being a system of information processing and exchange. To the extent the mechanism of exchange is relying on a daily television segment where info has to be condensed into blocks of time separated by commercial breaks, the collective mind will be at a disadvantage. Additionally, bias will highlight or neglect pieces of information, so to the extent bias is removed or countered, only a higher degree of signal should exist in the information. Bias is only inevitable to exist in any relayer of information. I don't believe it can ever be removed directly but has to go through a process of being compared with various perspectives so holes that were negated become filled and the weighting of importance of each detail can average out. I suspect the Hive that receives the most truly reality-reflecting information should have the greatest capacity for action in the world to progress its goals. In a Marques Brownlee-style Dear Twitter recommendation, I suggest creating an environment optimizing for the ease and accuracy of information to flow. One of the strengths I view this new 69-party Hive mind to have is the mechanism of debate built into its processing algorithm. Just look at the All In podcast, a panel of 4 honestly debating each other's viewpoints, not holding back their thoughts for the sake of politeness or conflict avoidance, but an honest conversation of what each mind thinks on a given topic. Debate and conversation is, to my knowledge, the best mechanism for pulling meaning from any stack of information. There is something very valuable to comparing thoughts, and maybe it is due to the bubble of influence I belong to, but my perception is that the 69 Hive engages in much more debate and idea refinement than any competing Hive mind. Left and right Hive seem to shame and make taboo any amount of questioning or outside of mainstream perspectives. It seems obvious to me that one of these Hive's approaches will lead to a more accurate understanding of reality, and that is the core competitive advantage for a Hive to obtain. Signal from noise, and signal is power. It is ironic to me that out of spite or some desire to not associate with Elon Musk, there has been a migration away from Twitter by primarily the left-wing Hive, which in my perspective is willingly foregoing using tools designed for ideas to propagate. It is essentially handicapping your Hive's ability to think and communicate. To the degree Twitter becomes a greater substrate for Hive minds to exist, it widens the advantage of which Hives utilize the tool over the ones that don't. Ultimately, the goal I believe for Twitter should be to become the most accommodative environment for information to exchange, and from that becoming the primary webbing for Hive minds to exist on. What are all the forms of information that naturally would be shared if only a communication channel existed to facilitate the exchange? Then what is the least friction manner to consume and process the information? Over the next handful of years, I expect to see the rise of an emerging cybernetic collective mind, as I sense a few others are also anticipating this possibility. Joska Bach, an AI and more broadly an intelligent systems researcher, expressed thoughts on this topic in a recent conversation on the Theories of Everything podcast, also joined by Michael Levin.
Elon Musk has bought Twitter, I think, because he has realized that Twitter is the network among all the social networks that is closest to a global brain. It's totally mind-blowing to realize that he basically trades a bunch of frothy stock for the opportunity to become Pope. Pope of a religion that has more active participants than Catholicism even, right? Daily practicing people who enter this church and think together. And it's a thing that is completely incoherent at this point, almost completely incoherent. There are bubbles of sentience, but for the most part, this thing is just screeching at itself. And now there is the question, can we fix the incentives of Twitter to turn it into a global brain? And Elon Musk is global brain pilled. He believes that this is the case. And that's the experiment that he's trying to do, which makes me super excited, right? This might fail. There's a very big chance that it fails. But there is also the chance that we get a global brain, that we get emergent collective intelligence that is working in real time using the internet in a way that didn't exist before. So super fascinating thing that might happen here. And it's fascinating that very few people are seeing this, that Elon Musk is crazy enough to spend $44 billion on that experiment just because he can and has nothing else to do and thinks it's meaningful to do it, more meaningful than having so much money in the bank. Right? So this makes me interested in this testbed for rules. And
Bach expressed how the general perception is that Musk acquired a social media platform for $44 billion, but maybe in reality Musk purchased a global brain for $44 billion in which Musk is the pope of this thinking system. The concept of a hive mind was first formally presented to me in the book Superintelligence by Nick Bostrom, where he argues potential paths in which a superintelligence may emerge. One of them being a collective intelligence comprised of many smaller information processing units. To a large extent this is what the human brain is. Where the neuron or even cortical column is the subunit that when massively replicated and connected in a network of communication creates a thinking feeling human. Can the human mind be an information processing unit and interconnected in a communication network to realize a global superbrain with the combined intelligence and viewpoints of all of humanity that connects to it? Elon has even tweeted similar sentiments over the recent months, for instance this tweet. A neuron doesn't realize it's a neuron. In another tweet more directly implying a global brain sentiment. Because it consists of billions of bidirectional interactions per day, Twitter can be thought of as a collective, cybernetic superintelligence. Perhaps the emergence of a collective, cybernetic superintelligence could be a hedge or layer of protection from the emergence of an artificial general superintelligence that may emerge from the machine learning field. Despite the merits or pitfalls such a thinking system may bring, there appears to me reason to believe the process of its emergence is underway. To condense and unify the many thoughts expressed in this writing, I believe we are in a period of time where in parallel a new hive mind is forming as well as an engineered substrate for hives to exist being developed. From my perspective this new hive is more aligned and capable of processing information for truth detection over the capabilities of legacy hives. I refer to this newly emergent hive as the 69 party if viewed as an evolving political party. Or the 69 hive if just referring to the hive outside of a political context. The number 69 has massive viral properties to our psychology which makes me think this name could be a feature for hive propagation. Additionally, its innuendo implies a break from traditional political correctness, establishing an ethos for breaking conventional rules of taboo communication practices. All orientations of thought and values coming together is encouraged and strengthens the hive as a whole. As far as I can tell, Elon seems to be the central node where the network of communication is rooted, and this hive, unlike other prominent ones, is internet native and primarily Twitter native. To the extent Twitter becomes optimized to facilitate the needs of a hive mind, then the 69 hive will likely outcompete hives that are slow to migrate to the greater communication substrate. The brain of the Elon Musk hive is here and it is waking up. Who can most accurately understand the true nature of reality will be most enabled to act and respond to it. Truth should be the primary virtue for any hive mind, and as I induce the 69 hive is most aligned to filter error from its information flow. Time will tell, let the best hive win. Please share this with someone who would think it was cool. Share. Leave a comment.
For more Brain Dead content, subscribe on YouTube, subscribe to the Brain Dead newsletter, and follow on Twitter. Links in the description.